Responsive Web Design, How Early Adopting Retailers Are Achieving Success. I'd like to introduce our speaker today. We have Steen Andersen, Vice President at Fifth Finger. We have a really great presentation for you today, so if you have questions, please feel free to submit them as we go along, as we'll stop for Q&A at the end. And in case you were also wondering, we will send you the final recorded webinar and slide deck. So without further ado, I'd like to pass you over to Steen.
Thank you very much. Look, I'm really excited to be here today and to share some of the great learnings we've been having in executing responsive web design projects for a number of retailers. I've been working in mobile now for over 10 years, and I think this is probably the most amazing time that I've seen in terms of the amount of interest in any one particular mobile technology or technique, which is responsive design. So it's very cool. I've got a deck for you here today to walk you through and present, and we have, sorry, let me just unpause the screen here. You should see a content slide coming up. And so I'm going to take you through why responsive design is compelling, and I think most of the folks on the phone who are coming to this type of call will be familiar with some of that, so I won't go too much, won't labour the point. And then secondly, we'll go through a couple of different approaches. This is the technology and implementation approaches. And then third, I'll take you through 3 different case studies of different responsive implementations. And then lastly, cover off a bit about lessons learned from our side, and just recap at the end. It's a bit more of a detail about Fifth Finger. So that's the plan. We've also got a couple of poll questions in there. I'd love to get some of your thoughts on that. And I know at one point there was a mentioning of having Dell join us on this webinar, but unfortunately we weren't able to line that up at the last minute. So we'll be plowing ahead with the same content anyway for this particular session. So thanks for joining, and I'll just jump in. So why do we care about responsive web design? Why is it compelling and interesting? And really it's driven from the market dynamics. eMarketer are showing us and predicting that by 2017, 25% of all e-commerce transactions will be happening on tablets and on phones. And so that's a really strong metric. I know a number of you have already got your own e-commerce solutions, would have seen good, strong traffic signs from tablet and from phone already, and that's only going to grow a lot. And so we need to have a solution that allows us to really address that growing trend of tablet and phone devices on our commerce sites, and do that in a maintainable, flexible, and future-proof way. And that's where responsive really has a lot of strengths. When you look at the two at a high level, the 2 options that have been out there for the last 18 months or so, the separate mobile site or proxy or MDOT site that has been the status quo and the normal approach for most retailers historically, really has quite some different properties to responsive web design. It has some strengths in device optimization and not having to touch the existing desktop site, but it has some real challenges around maintenance when you have to maintain both your mobile site separate to your desktop site. Also with deep linking and SEO, there's some real challenges there. And so that's where responsives really started to come to the fore as a really powerful solution. I thought at this early juncture I'd just do a bit of a poll of the listeners here on the phone, on the webinar, and see how many folks have got an existing mobile site in the form of a MDOT site, so m.brand.com. And I think there'll be a little poll which will pop up shortly to allow you to answer that yes or no. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I know that from our experience at Fifth Finger, we used to provide and deliver MDOT websites back since the early 2000s to clients. And more recently, it's been difficult because clients are getting frustrated with the effectiveness of the MDOT site, looking at, like, for example, one of our clients, Pete's Coffee, who we built an MDOT site for, that they were certainly seeing some good traffic numbers coming through and getting some good engagement from their site. But when you look at trying to justify further investments in that site, it's very hard to do that when you look at some of the challenge of the divergence between that and the desktop side. And so responsive is a solution that really can provide.
Welcome to GoToWebinar.
Sorry, guys. So the poll results are coming through. and it shows here that 58% of the audience have got an existing M.Dot site and 42% don't. So that would seem to me to be about on par with the wider market, which is great to hear that the folks on this call are already in the market, have some stats, and I think a number of you would have been feeling the pain points of the M.Dot site, and that's obviously why responsive is the topic of the hour. So let's jump ahead. Thank you for sharing. So why is responsive a game changer? There's three key reasons to jump out to me. One is firstly that responsive is really enabling the first practical realization of omnichannel marketing. Prior solutions to deliver omnichannel really were very fragmented, not future-proof, hard to maintain, particularly around the M.Dot approach or a T.Dot approach for a tablet site. And so it really opens up the door to a much more realizable future. It gives us a great platform to build that future on. Second key reason is that responsive has the ability to unify what used to be existing siloed teams. So often a lot of retailers have mobile and desktop teams separated, and it helps bring those together. And I think ultimately by doing so, helps generate a more customer-centric view of the web channel, and I think that's really key for long-term success. And the third reason is that resourcing and budgets are a constant struggle for all retailers, and having a solution like Responsive, which can help unify 2 or maybe 3 different websites into one, in the long term is definitely going to be saving a lot in terms of effort and internal, external costs to maintain and grow those properties. So they're the 3 key reasons, and there's a bunch of other tactical benefits, but that's why we see Responsive as a game changer, and why in our business we've certainly focused hard on this as a technology and moved away from the M.Dot approach, because we felt like it hasn't delivered to our clients the real benefits of what's possible in mobile and tablet as extending from desktop. So now I thought it would be useful and helpful to listeners to talk a bit about the different responsive approaches. There's a number of different techniques and technologies, and I've distilled it down here just to 2 main ones. There's a few different variants of these, but these represent the 2 main different approaches. The first of them is what we call traditional responsive web design. So the classical responsive web design, and it's and just to recap for everybody, it's really just a straightforward way of making a single website that displays optimally on mobile and tablet devices as well as a desktop device. And so using standard features of CSS3 and HTML5, if you code the site correctly, it will automatically render itself in an optimal way for any particular device, from a phone right up to a television. And it looks at primarily the horizontal screen resolution to determine which particular layout is the one to flow the elements to, and it usually builds upon a fluid grid layout. So that's it at a very high level, and certainly we've got more technology which can be talked about at some point, but that's really the high level of responsive, and it's what most of the market has been talking about for the last 18 months to 2 years. From that base of understanding, some folks in the market have been evolving that proposition further. One of the challenges, I'll just drop back here, one of the challenges with the approach of responsive web design is that you do need to code that website from the ground up to be HTML5 and CSS3 driven with a fluid grid layout and be responsive from the get-go. So it is a full front-end site rebuild to deliver that. So if you're building a new site from scratch, it can work, but if you've got an existing site you want to take to mobile and to tablet, it certainly can be a challenge. And so we've been working hard, providing some leadership in the market on how do we deliver the benefits of responsive design without having to recode a website. And that's where the transformative responsive web design comes in. This is an approach that we've been pioneering, which is taking responsive web design, combining it with what's called adaptive web design or progressive enhancement, and then an extra layer of technology, an approach around DOM manipulation, which allows us to, by combining these 3 different approaches and technologies together, we're able to take the code of an existing website and morph it into a flexible multi-device responsive solution without having to recode that site from scratch. So that's what we could look at and call a transformative responsive approach. So they're the 2 key approaches, traditional responsive and transformative. And when you put them up against an M.Dot site, you get a real sense of some of the differences and strengths and weaknesses. And with, as you can see with the transformative responsive design approach, we get the benefits of being able to, using some of the progressive enhancement techniques, we can tailor and customize the phone experience, make a very tailored home screen for the phone, which can be quite different to what's in the other devices, which classically responsive design is encouraging people to have a very consistent set of content per screen. But there's a very strong community of believers out there in the market who feel that the user needs and engagement when they're on the bus or out and about looking at a particular e-commerce experience is different to what they're going to have when they're on the couch. So thinking about the different modes between phone and then tablet, which may be more lean back, versus desktop, which is lean forward, means that you may want to really have slightly different experiences, which is what that allows you to do. And then also no website rebuild, which is the other main benefit, which is, as I mentioned before, you can launch without having to recode the site from scratch. It's a layer on top of the existing site. So that's really the three main approaches that are available to the market today. When we look at what's right for you, this is a bit of a summary of what we see as the options. And just quickly, I'll run through these from a mobile site point of view. There are some pros to doing an M.dot site, and that's a lot of the reason why a lot of us have gotten done M.dot sites in the past, which is that they're very quick to market. They give you a blank canvas to start from, and you don't have to touch the desktop site necessarily, and the cost is fairly reasonable. The downsides of the M.dot site is that you end up with maybe 2 or even 3 websites if you go for a T.dot for your tablet site, 2 to 3 sites to maintain. You definitely dilute your SEO and SEM investments because you have multiple domains to then optimize for. And deep linking is definitely often a failure unless you do a lot of redirection work. Deep linking is a real pain point to have email newsletters link through and be optimized when they land on a landing page versus social links as well. It can be a challenge. So that's the M.dot site. When you look at traditional responsive, it certainly has a lot of strengths and pros around consistent branding across all channels. You've got support for all devices, no matter what the size is, and any new device that comes in can be properly supported. The main downside with responsive is that rebuilding from scratch is costly and time-consuming, and it's hard to tailor to individual device situations. And then lastly, we have the transformative responsive solution, which has all the pros of traditional responsive, plus you don't have to rebuild the site, which is a key one. You've got a separate style sheet to ensure that any retrofit you're doing to tablet or phone is not going to change the desktop site. You don't have to necessarily touch the desktop site at all with a transformative solution. And it's less costly than doing a full responsive build traditionally. From our experience, we found this to be less involved from our side, certainly less involved from the client side, and overall much less expensive. And then lastly, the cons. Certainly, if you have a very complex site where the content is not really optimized well for different devices, or the code is very complex and really written in certain ways, it can extend the implementation time. It's still possible, but you certainly make a more involved project with that scenario. So there is some complexity there, and that's one of the main considerations with the transformative approach. So when you look at it, I think if you're doing a ground up, if you're at a point in time where you're wanting to do a full site rebuild of your desktop site, then certainly the standard responsive is a great way to go, and there's some great companies out there like ourselves who can help with that. But if you want to look at a site, you want to transform or allow your site to be optimized for tablet and for phone, then the transformative solution is certainly a lot more practical for most retailers. So it's really how to think about those two options there. And the M.dot site it's really a tactical solve for clients who want to be quick to market and just fix a problem in the short term. But for a long term, it's not a long-term viable solution for most retailers. So that's a bit of an analysis of the different options. I hope that was helpful, and we'll be sending this deck out to the list of attendees later on today, so you'll have a copy of this deck as well for your reference. So let's talk a bit about the different experiences and case studies that exist in the market today, and go through those. And before I do that, just to also recap, we will have time at the end of this session for some Q&A through the chat, so I'll certainly answer any questions you have at the end. It's hard to do one of these with no feedback, but I will plow ahead. So firstly, we've got 3 clients here to talk about NAS and 100 Contacts for implementations that we've done here at Fifth Finger, and then we've got a short case study from Disney, which is not one of our clients, but one that's certainly high profile. We wanted to share it as an interesting little case study. And NAS, for background, NAS is a cosmetics brand that's owned by Shiseido, one of the world's largest cosmetics companies. And then 100 Contacts is as you probably would know, a direct-to-consumer contact business. So let's talk about NAS first. So NAS used the transformative approach that we talked about. So they had a desktop site historically. They had no mobile or tablet site, and they engaged with Fifth Finger to build out an experience for tablet and for phone. And what you see here is the phone experience shown. And we've had some really positive feedback from the market and the industry in general. This has been, what we've been told is that this is one of the best-looking mobile sites out there today, which is really great to hear. So if you have a look at it, nascosmetics.com on your phone, you'll see a great-looking site, very visual, great experience, and the tablet also looks amazing. And I think we're certainly building off some great assets in the desktop experience, but at the same time we had to do quite a bit of work to really make it optimal for these other devices. And the goal for NAS was really to drive up their conversion rate. Obviously, they had no optimization for tablet or for phone, and so they were getting the desktop side on those 2 devices, and that was certainly hampering their ability to convert their checkout pipeline effectively. So we went through the project, and I thought it might be helpful on this session to share with you some of the challenges that we faced and had to overcome in the project. I think that's often a good way to think about and sharing that with folks. So the first challenge was that NAS had a highly customized instance of an e-commerce platform, which really had quite a lot of complex and almost a labyrinth of patches and tweaks applied to it. And so one of the key concerns that we had from their e-commerce technology group was, is this possible? Can we take this desktop site and really transform it effectively for tablet and phone and not run into any technical snafus? And we succeeded. And the way we did that was we used 3 different things as a way to really preempt and risk manage that complexity. And the first was we had 2-way technology briefings between our folks here at Fifth Finger and the e-commerce team at NAS to really understand each other's platforms and technology so that it would work in an effective way. We also did early integration into their source code repository to make sure that there was nothing in the Fifth Finger responsive library which would cause any conflicts with their e-commerce system or their front-end site. And then lastly, we trained their e-commerce team with how to use this library in an effective way so that as of the launch, they were able to take over the site and maintain the site themselves. And I haven't mentioned this so far, but I think it is one of the other key benefits of responsive is that it allows you to, the team that looks after the desktop site today can have full control over the tablet and the phone experience as well. And that's certainly where NAS has ended up, which is that they are now managing all 3 platforms and they have full control over those different environments, which is a really great place for them to be and where they want it to be. So the second challenge I wanted to share with you was one which happened to us a month into the project, which was it was decided by the client to add some scope to the project and add some new features, and really with the goal of making it more tailored for different devices. So that was certainly a new challenge in the time frame, and as well as we had a desire from the client to have device-specific promotions. So they knew that the customers on the phone were typically more valuable clients or consumers to the brand. They were folks who were most engaged, to the most avid shoppers of the brand. So they wanted to make sure they could offer, for example, on the phone, specific phone-only promotions through the Hero image, which were separate to the Hero promotions or other promotions they would show on desktop and tablet. So we had to make some code changes to support that, but certainly nothing major, but we had to make sure that was in there and tested. So the way we solved that was to scale up the project team. We added some additional team members, as well as we worked with them on a more enhanced production process around the Hero images, which I'll talk about a bit further in. The third challenge was that NAS had very complex brand guidelines that hadn't yet been tested or implemented in a phone experience or tablet, and in that touch environment, it is a slightly different considerations to think about there. And so we were worried that that might slow the project down because the client would be wondering how a certain PDF would look or screen image would look on a different device without really knowing what it was in that device. So what we did, we actually gave the client a number of different devices, and we set up a system where we could publish versions of those screens directly to those devices in their hands. So they could see what it looked like on device and provide they could provide feedback directly from those designs on device, and that gave them a greater level of confidence in their decisions and approvals, which helped speed up the process down the track, and minimal rework was needed on designs and layouts, which was certainly very helpful. So in looking at the overall project, we were really happy with how it turned out, and NAS will certainly provide any feedback to the same effect. They were very happy with how things turned out, and due to some great collaboration with the two teams, we were able to get the phone and tablet sites live within just 14 weeks, which was including over the holiday season, which was really a busy time for both teams. So that was a really great, fast, and productive time and outcome. So the obvious question is, what was the uplift in performance? And we have that to share with you. Very exciting. So we're looking at the checkout conversion percentage between the old desktop site and the mobile optimized site. On the phone, it was a 54% increase, which is huge. Very, very worthwhile for them, and definitely very strong ROI for the exercise. And then even more so interesting was the tablet. The tablet was a great improvement, seeing 48% increase in tablet checkout between the desktop site on tablet and then the tablet optimized site. And we have a video and run through of some of the different specific UI control changes we made and layout changes we made for tablet, which help provide some backstory to that, which I'm happy to share with anyone who wants to sort of have a look at that as a follow-up call. So looking at the second case study and setting this one up a little bit for you, what we find is that there's certainly some voices out there in the market, and often this is from non-responsive vendors who are making the claim that responsive is too slow to be able to outperform traditional MDOT experiences. And this is really a concern that we thought was important to understand and really try to test, and so make sure that it was actually in a good place. And so with the second case study here with 1-800 Contacts, who also used this transformative approach, they already had a highly trafficked proxy MDOT site, but they wanted to move to responsive because they felt they wanted to have the control over the site themselves, and they wanted to have the more efficiency and maintainability in their hands. But the biggest hesitation was their existing mobile provider who was offering them the MDOT site had told them responsive was going to be too slow and would hurt their conversion rates. So we agreed with them to do an A/B test. So test directly the traditional proxied MDOT site against the responsive site and see how the two would perform against each other. And so we did that, and we were very happy to see over a period of a month or more that the responsive won out. So the MDOT site over the same period of time was delivering a 10.6% conversion rate, with responsive delivering 11.5%, and that was enough to make 1-800 Contacts be 100% comfortable in this solution, and have switched off the MDOT site now and solely onto the responsive site. In addition, the tablet experience has also seen a boost in conversion rates, which is also great to see as well. So they're really happy. They're now maintaining and managing their own site themselves, full control over the code base and the technology, and they're not having to be beholden to a third party who otherwise is hitting them with change orders and other pieces when they need to make any sort of change to the site. So it's a really great solution, and they're really happy with that. When you look at one of the quotes I thought I'd just share from the VP of e-commerce at 1-800 Contacts was that he said that we were thrilled to see the responsive outperform our existing MDOT site. We were all hoping that responsive would be the winner. As the approach with less maintenance and cost, responsive was obviously going to win in our favour. It just took verifying the performance to cement it as the clear choice. Responsive did more than just clarify its position as the winner. It surpassed all of our expectations. So really great to hear that, and obviously helps us feel super confident about recommending Responsive as a path for our other clients. So that was 1-800 Contacts. The last case study here to share with you is a case study from Disney. And just a short one, this is only a very high-profile site. If you haven't checked it out, have a good look at it on tablet and phone. It's great looking, and you know, Disney were really looking at how to provide the richness and rich content of their sites, which are interacted on a daily basis across all these different devices. They were seeing a lot of uptake of site traffic on tablet by kids and other family members, and so they felt like it was critical to be able to provide a solution that was maintainable and also flexible and highlighted their great content. So they went with Responsive, and their approach was to really streamline the site, strip the UI free from any sort of ornaments or other busy elements of the site, which often happens with desktop sites, and really put the focus on the content. And so videos and games were made the hero, and if you look at the different devices, you'll see that it's really about the content, which makes a lot of sense for Disney. And the results for them were very, very positive. They had a good increase in site traffic compared to the previous site, and they really think that was due to the easier navigation of the new site and the fact that content was central. It meant that people had more reason to stay on site and increase the site session times. And so for Disney, they did, on top of the beneficial user engagement, they also had the benefits around the maintenance cost and time efficiency around that of having a single site approach. So again, a very good case study, and also a good example to look at, like the other ones I showed you before of layouts and so forth. And again, if folks wish to speak about specific UI approaches, we can certainly do that as a separate discussion. So before we go to the last part of the deck, I thought I'd just ask another poll question here of the audience. Do you plan on implementing responsive design in the next year? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, your yes or no, and get a bit of a poll as to the general feelings. We've certainly been getting a lot of inbound calls to FitFinger, looking at, inquiring about responsive, trying to understand the benefits and pros and cons. And we certainly find there's really this big line between folks who are ready to do a full site rebuild of their e-commerce site and folks who are wanting to take an existing site, which may only be a year or two old, and don't want to change the desktop site, but certainly want to leverage that asset base to optimize for tablet and phone. And that's where I think that's where the transformative approach is really, for us, we're certainly seeing a lot of interest in that. So love to see the results. I'm seeing some come up here. Oh, yes, that's very encouraging. 83% of people saying yes to this, which is awesome. 17% saying no. So definitely a very strong indication of interest in responsive. That is not a surprise, but great to see. Very encouraging. So lastly, I thought I'd share a few lessons learned in our journey through responsive. And there's a few other clients which I haven't mentioned here, which we've also gone live with projects as well. So it's been some good experience. And one of the first things that really jumps out to us as a key new discussion topic with responsive over traditional development exercises on the web is the discussion around breakpoints. And so breakpoints you may have heard of, but breakpoints in simple terms are the resolution, horizontal resolution at which you change layouts. So for example, if you're going from desktop down to tablet, you typically would set the breakpoint of around 1025 pixels. And so when your browser or device is less than 1025 pixels wide, it will present the tablet layout. If it's wider than that, it presents a desktop layout. And then with the phone, you may have another one of, say, often it's around 670 pixels, which you transition from the tablet layout to the phone layout. And in between these different breakpoints, you may still see incremental scaling, so you can still scale images and fonts in a very smooth fashion between these different breakpoints, which gives you some ability to still optimize inside those. But the breakpoints really define the different layouts that you need to both sort of consider and design for, as well as test for in a sort of thorough way. So So that's an important discussion point. And some clients like to go for more breakpoints, some for less breakpoints, but it really comes down to the less breakpoints you have, the less work there is to maintain the sites. The more breakpoints is a bit more work to maintain and test them. So breakpoints is a really important discussion to have early on in the project. Second lesson we found really quite interesting in some ways was that often the obvious thing that one does when making a tablet or phone version of our sites is to increase the font sizes. And this seems pretty straightforward in essence, but what we found is that the font size increases generally a lot more than what you would expect to make sense in the beginning. And we've spent quite a few cycles going back and forth on designs, and even once we're into final sort of phase of development, showing them on device to clients, and clients saying, look, the fonts are still a bit too small on this 7-inch tablet, what's going on here? And so we found that typically we end up increasing font sizes up to 3 times in 3 different rounds of changes to make them bigger again and bigger again. So we certainly recommend take what you think is the right font size increase and probably double that, and that would be a really good ending font size. But definitely expect to be seeing that you have to change that more than just once, because readability and touchability for fonts and areas on the page is just critical. And then also I want to talk about the design approach, and this particularly applies to a ground-up build when you're designing from scratch. And what we've found is that when you're designing for all three different screen sizes, phone, tablet, desktop, it's really helpful to think about scaling. And often we find that if we design for the phone first, it becomes easier to then work with that across the other screen sizes. So for example, if you're designing a hero image with fonts, for one example, and you design for the phone, you're going to make those fonts and the layout work on a small screen and be readable. And as you scale that up to tablet, it's still very readable, and in desktop, it's still readable. Whereas if you design for desktop, you'll often find that you'll use smaller fonts, and as you scale it down to the phone, it becomes very unreadable, and the layout doesn't work as well. So both for fonts, but also just for different modules, if you start with the phone, you end up with this convention of having more modular, scalable elements that you're working from, and as you go up to desktop, you can scale them up from that and increase complexity, but you know how to go back down, where if you start with desktop, it's hard to go down when you've got a complex element of the page. So that's one thing which we certainly recommend is a mobile-first design approach, and you can see this here with the NAS website, where if you look on the left-hand side, there's an example here where we've dropped in the desktop hero image onto the phone. You can see the fonts are not readable into the phone. That image in the desktop is a very large image, and they like to have the fonts in a certain way with a certain amount of white space around them, which is really great for the brand. Looks awesome. Whereas on the phone, they made the decision, instead of having to increase they could have increased the desktop font sizes to make it work for both, but that was not really on brand for them. So they made the call to create a secondary image for this hero, where they have a mobile-specific and tablet-specific version which has a larger font size. So it's really worth thinking that through and thinking through the pipeline of the production team and saying, do we design our images in a way that they're scalable for all devices, or do we want to split off and create multiple sets of content? And it's really just a cost-benefit trade-off. There are some creative things we can do now where we can make those actual text areas on images fonts, overlaid fonts with HTML5, and use downloadable fonts to give nice fonts, and allow us to actually do more scalable font positioning and still have one image with then the font sizing done in code, but it does have impacts on how do you approve that and manage that through the internal production and approval processes. So there's still complexities there, but there's certainly techniques we can use to make that more streamlined. And then lastly, I wanted to just talk a bit about gestures. Folks we talk about touch devices. Gestures is a really common topic of conversation. How we're going to use gestures to get the most out of these new great devices, which we can touch and pinch and zoom and pan around and swipe and all that sort of stuff. But the trick with gestures is not to, you don't want to force gestures in where they're not needed. And what we found with one of the NAS particular areas was that they had a rollover event. So on the desktop side, you could put your mouse over an image, and you would then get a small popover over the product image, and that would allow you to get additional information about the product, just like a mini preview before you go to the product page. And we tried to implement that on the tablet and phone experiences by having this little triangle idea here to imply you could swipe to reveal that, or a little information icon in the bottom right corner you can see on the right example option 2 there. And what we found was that both those options just distracted and detracted from the product image, which was really the hero for that particular page. And we agreed with the client just to take all that away and not try to show this extra layer of information. Just suppress that, let them go into the site one level deeper to get that product information, and leave the product standing in its purity and beauty. And that worked really well and really taught us a lesson about not trying to force in things like gestures if you don't really need them. Think about where's the right place to use them and not. So that's the summary of the different lessons. And as we come towards time for Q&A, I thought I'd just do a quick little summary of who we are, just for your edification and understanding. So Fifth Finger is an award-winning team of 50 folks here in San Francisco. We're backed by over 1,500 team members in the Merkle organization who acquired Fifth Finger mid-last year. And we're offering both traditional responsive and no rebuild responsive solutions. And that's what we're all about. So we can help brands realize their responsive goals by using our technology and development and creative skills to really help that happen. And our goal is to really help retailers take control of their sites and have the power to be in charge of what's happening across all the different channels. And in terms of what we provide customers, you would have picked up through the presentation some of what we do. But currently, Fifth Finger Responsive, which is our transformative responsive solution, is really the leader in the market in this area, and with a primary solution for delivering responsive to existing sites. And we've done this for a number of clients, including NARS, 100 Contacts, 7th Generation, and new clients such as LL Bean are also coming on board. Some really great big brands there, really big leaders in e-commerce are moving to this solution, even at large scale. So it's a great approach. And we can do so in really short time frames. No need to start from scratch, and we can work closely with the internal IT folks so they can take over the site once we're finished. It's really a great solution. We're really excited about it. And just to wrap up the technology very quickly for the nerdy folks among us, including myself, the way that our technology works is that we firstly define layout flows for the different devices, and actually looking at how your current site is laid out, and we'll break it into pieces and work out how would it flow into the different layouts. That's step one. That's a human step. Step two is a technology step where we add the fifthfinger.js library into your website, which is like adding an analytics tag to your site. Pretty simple, one line of code. And then when the site loads up on a device, what happens is that JS library looks at what page you're on, knows what the particular layout flow is for that page, and then the device, the phone or the tablet, then reload. Basically, when it loads the page, it lays it out instantaneously in a way which is optimal for that particular device. So it's a really nice, elegant approach. It's done on the client side. There's no back-end integration required. It's agnostic to any e-commerce platform, any CMS. It's one line of JavaScript code, and the rest of it's standard JavaScript and CSS, and so it works with any back-end that's out there, which is what's beautiful about the technology. And I won't go into super detail, but this is just a high level of the rendering pipeline for what happens on the device. So the device loads up the JavaScript, the page, and then goes through five steps to really optimize the page, all between the time it loads and it renders. So this all happens instantaneously in the background on the device, and it's really quick, really fast. And as we saw with 100 Contacts, any speed impact of this approach is not being a negative detractor. It's really the net result is an improvement in conversion rates versus a drop in conversion rates. So speed's definitely the only argument that's really been pushed forward to us as a reason against this approach. We've proven that that's not a problem at all. So that's enough about us. I thought now we could open it up to some Q&A and get some general questions. And we have some good questions here already. I'll try to pump through these. We've got a few minutes here. I'll try to choose them in order of most interest for people. So I think one of the questions here was about deep linking and deep linking being a problem for MDOT sites or not. Certainly you can do deep. The question is, why do I say that deep linking is a fail? Deep linking is supported by many MDOT sites. So you can certainly deep link from MDOT sites. It just means you have to do manual redirects or have a redirecting policy. So as long as you have to make sure that any pages you publish or any emails you publish are addressing parts of the sites on desktop that we know how to do, have a redirect policy for those. If you work outside that redirect policy, it's going to break the redirect. So it's just an extra level of maintenance and management to have that. You can certainly do it, but it's certainly a headache to have to manage the redirect policy, from our experience anyway. Another question here is, what is DOM manipulation? That's really just, the DOM stands for the document object model, which is the HTML code for the page and how that's loaded into the memory of the browser. And so when you look at a transformative approach, there's two layers of transformation. One is just replacing and swapping out CSS files, which gives you a good amount of customization for sites that are more modern. Sites that are a bit older in their front-end design, we use techniques of DOM manipulation, such as we can swap out tables for divs and basically re-render the HTML code so the page will reflow. And what's great about that is it means we can make virtually any change we want to make to the page. Obviously, the more we change, the more we have to maintain, but it does give you flexibility to change things across any age of site, which is really great. Let me look through here. What else do we have here? Good question here about analytics and tagging strategies for responsive, and certainly I should have covered that, but I'll certainly talk about it now. So analytics for responsive is very much the same as the desktop site. So your existing analytics provider, be it Omniture or WebTrends, can track your responsive site just like they track your desktop site today. What's nice is that it brings together a very uniform view of customer across all the different channels. Certainly you still have cookie separation between them, but one thing that we do recommend with responsive analytics is to make one change to the setup of your tracking, which is that by default the analytics packages will give you reports which you can segment based on screen size or often browser type, so Safari on iOS versus Android, but it won't necessarily give you a view of the different breakpoints, and that's often what you want to know. You want to know tablet as a whole, my tablet customers, how they're converting versus my phone customers versus my desktop, and you've got to really take the analytics packages and sometimes do a bit of massaging to get that view. And if you have multiple breakpoints, what we typically recommend is for each breakpoint that you have, when you're writing in a particular when you're hitting the event against the analytics server, is to also pass in a parameter to the analytics package, which gives them the breakpoint. So passing the breakpoint, and then you can segment any of the reports you have by the particular breakpoint, which is the one change that we'd recommend that you do for responsive. But otherwise, other than that, you can use your current packages, which is great. So the question here about does transformative design mean analysis of what technology to use? I'm not sure what that question is specifically answering. I think when you look at transformative web design, we're talking about the concept of taking an existing non-responsive website and making it responsive. And so that's really the key distinction there, versus responsive design is really for building your front end of your site from scratch again, so building the templates from scratch again. Let me just read through lots of questions here, which is great. So I'm trying to read through and find ones that are most resonating for people. Yeah, good question here about when you're choosing to hide elements when the screens go smaller. Is there ever pushback from users that you're taking something away? And I think that's a great question, and one that most of the surveys that we see coming back from users asking the question about what content do you want to access on your phone and tablet. Typically they do say, look, I'd like to be able to access all the features of the desktop site, It's just that the prioritization of those features is different. So the order they want to, importance of different features changes. So that's where responsive as a principle and transformative responsive works well, because you're basically providing all the functionality to those different devices, but you're just packaging it in a way that's more accessible, more optimized, and you can reorder. So you may still decide to suppress some content if you really feel like this content is not optimal for these devices and it's really cluttering the layout and causing us more grief than it is. And in that approach, we typically just recommend A/B testing. If you're on the fence about if it's going to help or not, you just do an A/B test to between having that content or not having the content, and see how it affects your key metrics and see if that works. But typically, the approach is to provide as much as possible. It's just about ordering and the priorities there. Question here about how do you deal with retail plugins such as reviews, ratings, recommendations that may be iframes provided by third parties. Certainly, those plugins which are embedded in the page, if the JavaScript inside the page, it's not a problem because, as you would see, they would work across all devices now today. When it comes into an iframe, it's certainly more complicated. There are things that can be done to inject code into the iframes themselves, but typically that involves some liaison with the third parties. So what we do is we typically work with clients and the third party to work out the optimal way to do that, or work on the layout in a way that we can try to work with the existing iframe intact, which is certainly possible with tablet as a compromise, but can be a challenge with the phone. So iframes certainly are one of the probably main challenges to overcome. Most of the other issues are non-issues in the scheme of things, but iframes certainly require engagement with a third party if you want to really optimize what happens with those third parties. And some of the alternatives is to use their APIs to generate the features you need from those third parties as well if they refuse to collaborate with you, and move from more of an API approach so you can have control over that front end. This question about responsive design does not need to redirect to a subdomain, but changes based on resolution on the client side. Can you speak to why your tech needs to redirect? So with our technology, we don't do a redirect with our technology. I think there's some situations where you may want to redirect to a different page just so you can have a fully customized homepage, for example, for phone. But it's still all one URL. So it's all just www.brand.com. And all devices should be on that URL, because otherwise it's the SEO benefits you don't see flowing through. We know we had one client who saw a 27% lift in organic SEO traffic when they moved to a responsive solution, because they were just amplifying all the efforts they were doing across these otherwise separate sites. So it's all one site, and redirects are not really a part of the solution anymore. There's a question here about which one creates a better customer experience, MDOT or responsive web design. I think that's a really tough question. I think when you look at, it depends how you measure customer experience. If you measure customer experience based on providing customers the full access to all site features and giving them some sort of consistent layout which makes sense across, as they change devices, they can see common design elements, and also that your site has features added to desktop which automatically become available across other devices, then, which is how I would look at it, then I think responsive web design is a clear winner on customer experience, and the conversion rates are there as well. We're obviously big fans of responsive. I think if you were going to build a completely custom site, like it was just mobile-centric, it was a portal to cater for a certain in-store use case, which is only relevant in-store and only on the phone, and you wanted to just make it fully customized, then certainly an MDOT site for that experience could be better. It could be faster to develop. It could be completely tailored for the phone. And so I think there's certainly situations where a standalone mobile-only use case that's outside your normal website would work fine as a separate mobile site or separate page for mobile. But if you're trying to extend your current site to these devices, then responsive is definitely a very, very strong solution. Another 5 minutes or so here, so I'm just looking for any last questions. Still a few more coming in, which is awesome. Yes, a good question here about how do you address the problem of downloading large amounts of content, especially images for onto a phone with a responsive layout. So that's certainly one of the tricks, and one of the things that we do with the transformative approach is we will transform the page to ensure that we're downloading smaller optimized images and not the full desktop images, and that really helps to make sure that you're not overloading the phone with oversized content. And we can also manipulate either through CSS or progressive enhancement or DOM manipulation. We can selectively choose what other content to show, be it copy or features or buttons on the device, or load those only if they expand. You might do a concertina feature where you expand a certain heading to show more content on the phone, and when you do that, it can then selectively load the additional content at that point in time. And so that's all techniques that can be used to streamline the process and make it still very fast on the phone. A couple of those questions in the same way, which is great. Hopefully that answered those. It's a good question here. Does a transformative approach require a stable desktop site? I think certainly that's been a challenge for the proxy MDOT solution in the past, which is that by scraping or page parsing a desktop site to produce an MDOT site, which a lot of folks are doing, and we've done in the past as well, you need a stable desktop site to be able to extract content from. What's great about responsive is that you don't need that. Your desktop site, as it changes and is very fluid, as long as you're using these responsive templates that have been created, then it's going to work across all devices, which is awesome. And that's really the part of the key benefits of responsive. Have a look. Any last questions here? Last question here, which is I'll answer because I like to answer it. What are the differences between different responsive design companies? And certainly when you're looking at choosing a partner to do responsive, you may find, and we certainly found this with a number of our clients who have in-house development as well, they'll look for external parties like ourselves to help them with getting up to speed on responsive, and maybe we'll do the first site, release or one or two releases of a site, and it may be done in a way which is even incremental. So you may responsify the checkout flow just by itself initially and get that live, and then responsify other parts of the site. And you'll see that for big brands like Sony and Starbucks, where the top couple of levels of their corporate sites are responsive, and then as you go deeper, they're still working through the rest of the content to make that responsive. But at least they're getting an initial great experience for customers. So we certainly play that role. When you're looking at choosing a partner, back to that part of the question, you want to think about their creative experience. You want to think about how many responsive e-commerce solutions they've done. There's certainly a lot of challenges and considerations when doing commerce with responsive, and so you want to see how many folks have got some good case studies around responsive for e-commerce. And you want to think about, can they provide? There's typically two types of companies. There's companies who are traditional web agencies who are moving from the desktop side into responsive and bringing a desktop approach to that versus folks who are coming from a mobile-centric point of view. And so you want to think about what's going to give you the best outcome. We come from a mobile background, so we're biased to think that the mobile experience is more important because web's pretty straightforward now. It's not hard. Everyone knows the web. It's actually the tablet and the phone piece which is the hard piece. And so think about the experience of the agency or partner you're looking at from a experience across the different devices in their past. And then lastly, think about technology. Can they provide you with? Is it important to have a transformative solution available from this partner, or if it's ground up, what are their creative skills to give you a ground up solution as well? So that's some of the considerations that I would put out there. And I think that's really wrapping it up. I think there's a couple more questions here, but I think we're running out of time. I'm not sure if WBR are on the line, and if they... Yeah,
I think that is all we have time for. I just wanted to thank everybody for joining eTail and Fifth Finger this afternoon, and I want to give a special thanks to Steen. It was a great presentation, and just a final reminder that we'll be sending you the final recorded webinar along with the slide deck. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you very much.